everybody. Paul Richards here with HuddleCamHD. Thank you so much for being here. We're live every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. I have with me the CEO of ScreensOfGreen.com, Scott Malone. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Paul?
I am doing wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. Before we start, I just want to let everyone know if you hit that like button, you are donating $1 to the CASA of Susquehanna Valley. They help children in need get adoptions. And last year, we ended up giving over $23,000, all due to you guys. So you come here and we try to make the world better, not just live streaming, which we have some really cool live streaming stories to tell, obviously. But we're helping out kids in need as well. Wanted to quickly mention next Tuesday, which is January 17th at 1 p.m., we are going to have our Partner Q1 update. We got some new products on the line, and our dedicated channel team wants to let our partners know first. So if you're an audiovisual integrator or a partner out there watching the show, try to sign up for this. There will be a link. Maybe Tess can put the link in the chat room. But we have our dedicated partner team is going to show off our brand new auto tracking camera that we talked about last week, our brand new 3X with audio built in, which is a really cool camera, and just a bunch of new stuff that has come out. And all of our cameras are great with green screens, as you know, Scott, and we're going to do a demo of that. As you may or may not know, we start every live show with a lightning round.
All right, we're ready.
You ready?
We're ready.
Let's do it. Okay, Scott, do you like coffee or tea?
Coffee, straight.
Straight coffee. What's your favorite book?
Team of Rivals.
Team of Rivals. How about your favorite movie?
Star Trek, the newest version of it. The very first one.
I haven't seen that one yet, but that sounds good. Are you an iPhone or an Android kind of guy?
iPhone.
Mac or PC?
Mac.
Wow, you're going all Mac. You're running against the grain, but I like it. Think differently. Here's a question I always ask. If you could go back into time, 24 hours, and watch 24 hours of history unfold, when and where would you go?
Well, Team of Rivals is Lincoln's story, and I think I've been most fascinated with him historically. So I would love to be there at the Gettysburg. I think that would be an amazing time.
I was just there, actually, with my brother-in-law, and some people say history geeks are a little funny, but my wife included. She was like, what is going on with this? But I thought it was super cool. So first time on the show, thank you so much for being here, Scott. One of the things I wanted to mention is that we're doing a follow-up show on Facebook on Mondays, everybody. So that's a new thing. You cannot live stream to Facebook and YouTube at the same time. You can, but it's against Facebook's rules and policies, and as a business, we don't want to be breaking those rules. So we're doing a follow-up show, same time on Monday on Facebook for the Facebook users. We're going to show some cool stuff such as Facebook reactions to some questions, to the questions that we get on this show, the content for this show. So Scott, let's give us a 60-second introduction to Skytility.
So Skytility was actually the brainchild of a bunch of fire chiefs, believe it or not. I am a recently retired deputy fire chief. And we knew that there was a gap in the technology usage and the technology that was available between private sector and public sector. Public sector is a good 10 to 15 years behind. So we started Skytility to consult with public safety executives and healthcare executives in trying to implement newest cloud services, the best technologies that were helping in their mobility. And it really led to web conferencing as a UCaaS item. And this unified communications, what it's really doing internally for public sector is pretty amazing.
Wonderful. So a brainchild of a fire chief. Was it fire chief or police chief?
Fire chief.
Fire chief. Wonderful. That's always good to hear. We have to respect what you guys do, especially after, so many things, so many reasons why. So tell us a little bit. I'm going to take us to your website here. Tell us a little bit about the different types of green screens that are available today.
Well, I'll start with the traditional ones that we do not sell, just so that we can relate in the topic, which is you have your typical muslins and green cloths, if you will, that up until recently were kind of the standard, where you'd pin them up on the wall and that was your green screen behind you. And then you can get into chroma green and chroma green paint, which is what they use in the video industry quite a bit. And we wanted a solution at Skytility for our customers that were using specifically Zoom video conferencing, which I know we're going to get into later. And they wanted a more professional, aesthetically looking green screen that they could hide when they weren't using it, but at the same time it was readily available and easily deployable. And so we did quite a bit of research, and it just came down to us that we wanted a green screen that was a projector screen type. And so we came up with a method of creating a green screen that really is a projector screen. And those green screens now are being deployed all over the place. We're using them in hospitals, offices, your typical commercial offices, but also professionals, even in anyone that does a live stream or a webinar or video conferences quite a bit. The ability to turn on a virtual background as opposed to using your office works pretty well.
Wonderful. Yeah, and we're going to actually get right into a live demo. I have one here. I love it. But as we're on this topic of who's using them, you mentioned a few of the places. Public sector, private sector, anything, case studies you want to talk about?
Sure. Well, like you and I were talking about earlier, churches in particular are using these quite a bit. Because they have a lot of virtual and remote followers. We're not just talking here in the United States, of course, but in countries where maybe their sermons would normally be suppressed, they're actually doing live streaming online on the internet, and they want to create an environment behind them that is professional, and that's where those green screens are being deployed. In the public sector or public health, there's a lot going on in what's referred to as the public health transformation. And you hear about it every day, the Affordable Care Act and what's going to happen with that, the effects on Medicare and Medicaid. And a lot of medicine approaches are changing with the technology, specifically telemedicine. Mm-hmm. And so a couple years ago, telemedicine really was very complex. Web conferencing, the software had not matured enough that it could be deployed in the field reliably. But we found in the last 36 months or so, frankly, with technologies like HuddleCam and what you're doing in the camera world, combined with what Zoom video conferencing has done with virtual backgrounds, you're finding that professionals like doctors now do like video conferencing and use it more often. And so a good example of this is in the state of Arizona, we have a couple of remote cities up north that are up in the area of the Grand Canyon. And you're not going to have a large hospital that can provide all of the services that you would normally get in a metro area. And to be able to talk to a specialist directly, or for a specialist to be able to talk directly to the patient, is invaluable when they're triaging whether this is urgent enough for a life flight, a helicopter, to come pick them up, whether it can be a ground transport, or whether it's something they can deal with remotely. And doctors are really embracing this. We're seeing a lot more deployments of it.
Wonderful. Well, let's segue into green screen tips, and I want to go ahead and give a live demo while we're talking about these tips. I've got a couple, but Scott, tell us about some tips that you have.
Sure. Well, I'll speak specifically to our office deployments, because that's what you're going to see across the board as about 90% of the deployments. Whether it's your home office or whether it's a corporate office, we have found in the implementation of green screens, there's a couple things that aren't necessarily talked about enough, which is, and we'll start with why muslin green screens or the cloth was used so predominantly before this era, which is you need a background that does not reflect light. Because if you have a reflection, it is going to change the different shades of green. And when it gets down to the software that we're using to do these virtual set works and these virtual backgrounds, it is completely dependent upon the pixelation that it picks up behind you. So your green screen needs to be two things primarily. It needs to be a flat color, and it needs to be even across the board. And that evenness is dependent upon the lighting, which I know we're going to get into lighting in a little bit. So when you're looking at the actual material that you're using for your green screen, it has to diffuse lighting. It cannot reflect it. And of course, projector screens have a tendency to want to reflect. That's what they want to do. And in our processes in developing our screens of green, it took about 50 different chemical iterations before we came up with a compound that didn't reflect too much. Couple other tips. Lighting and location, and your location to the camera. So I'll give some actual measurements. If you have a green screen behind you, we have found that the average is about 2 feet off of the ground that you want the bottom of your green screen. That's the minimum. If you're doing stand-up, obviously it's going to be all the way to the ground. Secondly, you want it about 4 feet behind you. If you get too close to a green screen, so I'm going to back up, you're going to end up with the too many shadows. Yeah. And when you lift up and you look around, you can pick up, if your lighting is not real good, the closer you are, the more your shadows show up. Now, when you're sitting towards your camera, you can also tell if you're too close to the camera. Your lighting has a tendency to wash your face out. And so you want to be sitting a good 3 feet from your camera. And when you have good quality cameras like HuddleCamHD, you do have the ability to have the camera quite a ways away from you and zoom in, as you already know. And then finally, your lighting needs to be diffuse as well, meaning you don't want a directional lamp. You don't want a light bulb. You actually want LEDs. And Paul, you tell me when you want me to show some of the lighting fixtures that you can have on your desk.
Yeah, I was thinking, well, let me give a live demo of your screen. And from what you just told me, we basically have it set up exactly the way you want. Now, I apologize if you guys are going to hear a little crackle because my microphone, but let me zoom out. And this is almost exactly the way I have our boardroom set up here. So I have the screen here about 2 feet from the floor, exactly like you mentioned, Scott. And then I have it about 2 to 3 feet behind me. So if I pull this up, and this is the kind of the beauty of it, especially for like a corporate setting, where now I can just have a regular meeting in here. It's a regular boardroom. Or, you know, if I'm going to do a lot of people, what they want to do is they want to turn an existing space, an existing conference room, an existing boardroom into a live streaming space. Here it is, hidden out of the way. No one's going to hit their head on it. It's mounted up high. And I can go ahead and pull it back down. And now easily, just so easily, be able to, apologize if you can hear a little crackle. I can't be moving this microphone cable around too much. Now I'm easily, back into a space where if I zoom back in, of course it's nice to have a pan-tilt zoom camera. Now, here we are, back into our virtual area. So I just wanted to give everyone a kind of a demo of that. And Scott was able to get us such a nice sized green screen for this large space. Let's segue into Zoom video conferencing, and then we'll talk about lighting, Scott. One tip I want to throw in here, if all else fails, do a dark background, okay? Because what are those pixels that are coming around you? They're black pixels. They're black dots. Don't use a white background. Use a dark one. That'll hide them better. That saved me all the time. Now, with your green screen and our great lighting and the cameras and all the tuning, I can do an Apple white background where it's just all white, and I'm completely fine. But, not everyone's working with perfect lighting and perfect green screens. Tell us about how you're video conferencing with us right now. And I want to show this here because a lot of people are always asking us, what are you doing? How are you doing this? Let me show a quick picture of how we're setting up this live stream here. So basically, I've got a camera, right? That's pointing towards the green screen. I've got a computer running vMix. That's my video production software. I've got a nice headset microphone. Then I got a second HuddlePod Air, a wireless microphone, so that I can just talk to Scott through that. And I've got 2 monitors, one for my video production software, one for my Zoom call. So the Zoom call is what Scott is calling through from on this video conferencing cloud here. And Scott, you're just calling from your computer, right?
I am. In fact, what I'll do is I'll zoom back out. And if my fancy Zoom is pushing the laptop away from me because I think, like we talked about before, you can have the complete setup with the virtual setworks or the vMixer that you're using, or you can simply have a laptop with 2 lamps and a green screen behind you. And I'll take mine off. And I also want to show that I've got, this is just your typical residential closet.
Wow.
And I've just turned it into my office momentarily. I happen to be on the road. I'm with family, and we were able to set this up in about a half an hour. And our lighting is these LED desktop lamps, and they are pretty amazing. They articulate at 3 different knuckles and 180 degrees. And if you notice, they're LED, providing that diffuseness that we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And we sell those too on the website in my shameless promotion.
Yeah, no. I mean, those have been incredible. We had bought lighting for all of our salespeople not long ago. I mean, it was 4 or 5 years ago, and now to see you with these soft to touch LED lights that work so well, and they're moderately priced here on Scott's website. It's just incredible what the pricing is like, what the quality is like. And I want to show really quickly for those people who like Zoom and use Zoom, let me go ahead and bring in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of add the Zoom client next to you. So you see that Zoom client there, guys? If you hit the settings bar, and sorry, Scott, I'm covering up your face with this.
No, that's okay. It's too big anyway, so we're good.
Exactly. I had to cover you up for a moment. If you had the latest version of Zoom, there's this new button called Video Background, and that's all Scott's using here. He's not using any extra software. It's built right into Zoom, and now you select what you want, and literally you're video conferencing with the background. You don't have that ugly clutter behind you. So, Scott, that's really, really cool. Let's move on to our next topic. We covered that. I just wanted to make sure it was fully covered. You talked about the lighting. We've only got 2 minutes left. Let's talk about HuddleCam for just a moment here. When you use a HuddleCamHD camera, you have the ability, unlike Logitech's and some of the other cameras on the market, you have the ability to tweak the color settings. And that's one of the things we didn't really finally talk about. Yes, you need great lighting. Yes, you need a good green screen and properly, located, and dark backgrounds are going to help. But the ability to change the hue, the color that the computer's seeing, the hue, the contrast, the iris, the brightness, the sharpness, all of these things are incredibly powerful. In fact, here's another high-level tip from someone who uses a lot of cameras: focus. Believe it or not. Okay, so if you have the green screen set up properly where it's behind you, you can use what's called bokeh. Have you ever heard of bokeh before? What bokeh is you have the subject in focus, but the background is slightly out of focus. So that green screen becomes kind of a green blur, as opposed to like capturing shadows and different, inconsistencies in the green. You can have with focus, you can actually play around with that as kind of a final touch. But Scott, we've only got a minute left. Tell us about the future. What can we expect from screensofgreen.com?
Well, we are growing, which is good. And we are hoping with the development and the progression of web conferencing that virtual backgrounds becomes the norm for all video conferencing. Not just the platforms we've talked about so far. Mm-hmm. And I think that you'll find one of the approaches we're taking really has to do with connecting families. And in care facilities across the United States, you have a lot of people that could really spend some time with family and they are not able to travel because they're older and they have medical issues that prevent them from traveling. And we found that the video conferencing, although for a bunch of geeks like us, it's relatively straightforward, for them, it's a lot more complex. And so we're developing pods that will hopefully go into care facilities in the future where they hit a button and they actually get a live operator, and that live operator connects them to whoever they want to, specifically their family members, sets up all of the technology on the back end, and all they're doing is interfacing with a camera. And these pods would be activated by somebody sitting on a seat. And so when you sit on the seat, you can even get to the point where it's voice activated. But that's in the near future. We're already working on it, and we're kind of excited to see where that goes. I think live operator is important.
Well, that sounds great to me. Thank you so much for joining the show, everybody. We really appreciate having you. Scott, if you can be on Monday on Facebook, we'd love to have you. Everyone heard of that. We're streaming there now, and take care. We can stick around for a little bit of Q&A if you want, but I don't have too much time.
Yeah, sure.